Don't you worry, the clip's about to begin, but don't forget to subscribe. Or else, don't make me turn this website around.
All right, we are going to speak with Taylor. Taylor's pronouns are they, them for people. One person in a chat or in a comment recently put something like, first of all, they called it autistic, which was just a douchey move, but it's autistic to list somebody's pronouns when you're going to be speaking to them, and in a one-on-one conversation, you're going to be saying you. You're not going to be using their pronouns. The point of listing a person's pronouns, especially when they're unique and you can't infer them, is because we have commenters like yourself, who was being an asshole, as well as a live chat who might be talking about the conversation and the topic at hand. So we're basically signaling to live chat as you're having this conversation with us, this person's pronouns are they, them. So Taylor, sorry that you had to be the person who I made that example with, but it was something on my mind recently. Taylor, what did you want to call and ask about?
First of all, Jimmy, I have to say thank you. You just made me feel so validated after my counseling session where we totally talked about my pronouns and shit. And, oh, sorry, you don't care if I curse. Anyway, just thank you for making me feel validated.
Minecraft server. How dare you? How
This
dare
is a very, very clean conversation about sex, kink, and everything else.
That's why I've referred to my butt as only Fanny for the entire thing. Anyway, Taylor, I'm glad. But yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So my question was basically you guys were talking about sex ed, and my main question was if you guys could implement one thing into current sex education, you know, one thing that you could do right now and it would change sex education, what would that be?
I bet we have the
and
same
then
answer.
also, how do we talk to the younger how do we talk to younger people about kink, if that makes sense? You know, I am in a poly relationship, and like I don't even know fully how to talk to my cousins about it who are younger than me and in high school. That's really all my questions. I also just wanted to say, Jimmy and Amp, you guys both have completely changed my world and made me more true to myself and figuring out who I am. So I just want to thank you both individually for just being on YouTube and being yourselves on both of your channels. And yeah, so those are my questions.
I'm sure we both super appreciate the sentiment. Whenever somebody says that, I always like to intercept and say, never forget to give yourself credit, because if you've seen giant change in your life, you are the agent of that change, not us. So I think we're both super happy to be a part of people's journeys, and that's why we're here on YouTube. But never stop giving yourself credit. And honestly, any level of gratitude you feel exteriorly, that's not a word, but in the exterior to someone like us, times it by 10 and give it back to yourself.
So good job. But the question, I have a few answers for the first part of that question, Jimmy, so I'm going to let you answer first.
You only get one thing. You can add it to sex education right now. Okay.
Yeah, so you go first.
It's good that I feel like I wanted you to go first because I could shame you if it wasn't the same answer as me, because I personally think there's a correct answer to this question. The one thing you would add that right now is lacking is actually teaching consent.
Yeah,
Teach kids what consent is, what it looks like, how you obtain it. Teach. And it's funny because whenever you bring up this topic, the people who immediately go oppose, they bring up this like ginormous sort of caricature of like, oh, what do I have to go and get a contract? And it has to say, I consent to having, because they are people who are violating consent, frankly. They don't want to actually receive real consent from a person. So I would say, first of all, consent. You definitely need to. There are kids who don't understand that having sex with somebody who is unconscious or sleeping, that is the aforementioned word that we can't say before. They think it's in a different category. They think it's something else. if they, and then some don't even necessarily think it's wrong at all. And you have this attitude of like, well, if you didn't want it, you shouldn't have gotten drunk and worn that outfit kind of thing. Like those are still purveying attitudes in our society. So if there's one thing I could add, it's consent. Now, Amp, what would you add that's not the correct? No, I'm just kidding.
So I was going to either say consent, and I absolutely agree, with the caveat that it has to be that one about tea. Do you know which one I'm talking about? Where it's like using tea as a form of consent in the conversation. Like if you ask someone if they want a cup of tea and they say yes, then you give them a cup of tea. If they say no, why the fuck would you give someone a cup of tea? Yeah. Same things go for like if someone's unconscious or asleep. You wouldn't pour a cup of tea on someone unless they asked for a cup of tea. And at the same time, I might feel like a cup of tea in the morning, but if it's like afternoon time, I'm feeling like, some water or like a White Claw. I'm not going to, well, it's after 5 o'clock, right? But the story being consent can be given and taken away. And if I don't feel like a cup of tea anymore, you should be okay with that and not get offended that you might have made a cup of tea, but I don't need to drink it. I don't have to drink it. I don't want to drink it. So it'd be that video.
Really beautiful conversations you can, especially with a partner. Like my partner and I at the beginning of our relationship basically were like, listen, you have it, but I can still withdraw it. But rather than having to worry about getting consent every time, you only have to worry about if I'm withdrawing it. And I've told my partner before, like, even if I'm sleeping, that's fine.
And can I say that it's super also important that, like, I'm in a dom sub relationship with my partner, and I'm the sub. As a sub, I can still take my consent and say, hey, I really don't feel comfortable tonight doing this. Could we just cuddle instead? Yeah. And it's so valid. Consent can always be taken back.
And it can also be immediately reissued, because I've been in that exact situation 100 times where one of us was like, not in the mood. Can we cuddle? Then we cuddle, and then it's like, I was wrong. So it's a thing that you can toggle this as much as possible. You just have to respect wherever the toggle is. My partner and I have made a ton of plans to do things we've never done. We've tried to basically like, hey, let's not do it for long enough to watch a movie. I don't think we've ever gotten past, like, I think the closest we got was I showed them Daveed Diggs doing the Lafayette song on Hamilton. And it kind of also turned into something because I was basically showing them that to be like, look how hot Daveed Diggs is in this scene. And so it turned into something else. The switch can toggle no matter who the person is. Wherever the toggle is, you need to respect it. You need to respect if it's a yes or a no at that moment. And it can change rapidly. And there are worse things in life than thinking you were going to come one way and now you have to go to the bathroom and come a different way. There are much worse things in life than that.
And the second part to that question being, it was if kink was appropriate to teach, or when is that appropriate to have that conversation?
Yeah, I think it was like,
my second question was, like, how do you talk to like the younger generation? Like, I'm 29. My cousins are in high school right now. Like, I would never talk with an 8-year-old about this stuff, obviously. But like, how do you talk to like kids? Like, a poly relationship, I think, is a little easier to talk to them about. But like, sometimes I call my dom daddy. And if one of them heard that, how do I talk to them about that, if that makes sense? It's just like, I don't want to like scare them, and I also don't want to be inappropriate. And it's like, I don't know how to like guide myself with those type of conversations.
I think that's definitely a hard conversation to have, and it's very dependent on who you're talking to, the age of the person, what is appropriate to talk to them about. I think with something like daddy, like I call my partner daddy all the time, and I'll get that gross look from adults, and I'm just like, to draw parallels is very helpful sometimes. I'll be like, you call your partner like baby or honey, and that's apparently okay, but like calling my partner a nickname that makes me feel special, makes them feel special, it's something that I call them, and it means that I love them. That does not mean you're going to call everyone that. But to answer the question, it's definitely an age-appropriate thing. So you're not going to tell kids about kink. If they were to fall into that or figure out what was going on, you're having like the same way you would talk about sex. If a kid started asking about it, you are making love to your partner. And I would say, depending on their age, like I'll talk to you and tell you about it when you're older, and then kind of have the birds and bees talk, which I never had as a child.
It's funny though, because even back to like not trying to draw it back to the thing we already beat to death, but when you're talking about consent is also the first conversation for kink as well. And so like one of the things, you don't have to explicitly like, we don't need to go seek the young people and tell them about kink. We don't need to be like, did you already know about rope play? Like that's not a conversation. But if you've explained to them the concept of consent and the idea that you and your partner may want to do things as long as it's consented to and everybody is safe, more in an existential way, because sometimes the danger is the fun part, but everybody's safe, then that's what's fine. And so it can be more of a conversation about it's between you and your partner and what you both agree to. It doesn't literally have to be like, oh, so you want to know about knife play? Well, here we
Well, and so to that though, they've when a kid or a teen comes to you with questions like that, they clearly already have some preconceived idea because they've already found or heard or been told something. And so in that respect, I would much rather the parent or adult took control of that conversation, talked about consent, for God forbid, or even got in front of like the porn conversation, because kids nowadays have access to that whether you want them to or not. And if you don't have that conversation, or at least belittle what preconceived idea they might have just from seeing someone getting flogged or just having sex on video, if you don't get in front of that, then they think that is sex education. And that is far worse than if you have an awkward conversation with your kids.
Porn is not a sex education.
That's what happened to me. I mean, honestly, my sex education was so terrible, and porn was my way into the door of all of that. And then it got me into kink. And I mean, I knew this stuff at 13, and I shouldn't have had to been taught by porn, but that's how I began to understand it, and it sucks. And I wish we had better sex education and someone telling me, what everything was, rather than me having to go and look up porn and really figure stuff out.
It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that right now even parents aren't having the right conversations with their kids, because there definitely are conversations they need to have. Like Amp was talking about, don't let porn be their introduction to sex and let them think that that's what it is. But also, like, we communicate completely differently now, and conversations about sending nudes, for example. This is one of those ones where it's like, I know that telling kids they can't do it isn't going to stop them, but really you shouldn't send nudes before you're 18. I genuinely feel that way. Like you don't want, technically you've just created, I mean, from a legal standpoint, you've just created and distributed child porn. So for no other reason to not ever have to worry about that coming back to bite you in the ass. I guess I just wanted to take this opportunity to tell everyone, don't send nudes until you're 18. It's just the smart, not because I think you're wrong for wanting to, not because I think it as a thing is wrong, sending nudes to each other, but because you're not 18 yet and it causes a whole lot of more problems. And you're also probably not old enough to really know whether or not that's something you want to be out there. Now, once people are actually adults, I encourage everybody to be naked on the internet, but only if you want to. I just know the ramifications, exactly, and be prepared if somebody finds those nudes as an adult. I have accepted that no matter how much I wish, there are just people in my life that are never going to create an OnlyFans, and so I'm never going to know what I want to know. And you just have to accept that. You just have to. You just have to accept that. You want to unpack that? Oh my goodness! I became friends with so many beautiful goth people that I just am so curious about, but. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Consent. Consent. Exactly. You can wish, but never violate the consent because of your wishes.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for that insightful question, Taylor. That was great.
So much.
Yeah.
Oh.
I appreciate you guys so much. And as they've been saying, please go and watch What's the Safe Word. It's fantastic. And keep watching Jimmy's shows. They're fantastic. Jimmy has taught me so much about atheism, and Amp has taught me so much about myself with my sexuality and kink. And I just appreciate you guys. So thank you. Have a great night.
Thank you. I do actually want to expand on the thing before. And the following is not serious. It's a joke, but it popped in my head. And so I think it'd be a funny discussion. What about an OnlyFans wish list? Now, hear me out. The way it works is it's anonymous, and it basically informs a person, were you to start an OnlyFans, this is the amount of people who are pledged and ready to support you now, today. Ready
like a GoFundMe, but for OnlyFans, pretty much? Yeah.
Obviously, it would create an undue pressure where a person might make a decision in the heat of the moment where they're like, oh my God, I'd make $1,200 on the first day. And then they make that decision and then they regret it or whatever. And so that's why it's mostly a joke.
Absolutely.
And so the wish list will forever just be something I have written in a notebook hidden in my apartment. That's the furthest
joke.
For me.
Just a joke, no. Just a joke.
It's just a
joke.
Oh my God! But
seriously, the chat says, "Go undress me." That's what it would be called if it wasn't a joke.
Yeah. You could even say, you could even keep fund in there. Go fund dress me, like that's. I like the wordplay there.
Hey, thanks for checking out this clip for The Line. While you're here, hit that like button, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and then share this with that bitter uncle of yours who loves talking about the good old days.